गोपाल गोकुल वल्लभी प्रिय गोप गोसुत वल्लभम गोपाल गोकुल वल्लभी प्रिय गोप गोसुत वल्लभम गोपाल गोकुल वल्लभी प्रिय गोप गोसुतवल्लभं चरणारविन्दमहं भजे भजनीयसूरमुनिदुर्लभं गोपाल गोकुल वल्लभी प्रिय गोप गोसुतवल्लभं चरणारविन्दमहं भजे
We are illegally visiting one of many iron ore mines found in northern Orissa, India. With us are members of the Kirti Human Rights Organization. They give a voice to the Adivasi, India's original inhabitants. This land belongs to them, and, under Indian law, nobody is supposed to be able to take it. Yet it happens time and time again. Their land is ruined by industry, and the pollution here makes them sick. Their livelihood is destroyed.
He's telling that earlier they have very good crop in this land, and there was rainfall, as well as there was irrigation from the perennial sources. There are deep forest, ecology was very, very deep, he was telling. And these roads, these minings, nothing was there, only land, forest and the people. That is the reason people are also been manipulated by the mining owners to continue their minings, and whenever there are local revolution, local resistance to the mining people give bribe to the people, maybe 1,500 rupees each, and they continue their mining.
This is equivalent to roughly 20 euros. For families like that of Raghu Juanga, it is a lot of money. She is a widow living off handouts. 20 years ago, her husband received a small loan from a moneylender. Most loans come with exorbitant interest rates. Her husband never managed to pay back the money. Even before he died, the lender had taken possession of their land, about 1 hectare. The house is the only thing she had left. For 5 years I've been trying to get my land back. The villagers have been supporting me. They even harvested all of the crops. But the moneylender came back with his people and took the majority of the harvest back. The courts have to decide, because the land is mine. Since a Maoist movement formed among the Adivasis in 1967, government help is often withheld from the community. At the time, when the farmers were fighting against large estate owners, anyone suspected of being a sympathizer was thrown in jail. It was horrible. For 2.5 years I was in jail. After being beaten, I signed a confession saying that I belonged to the Maoist Naxalites, but it's not true. I just worked for the Kirti Human Rights Organization.
They started asking government to implement the development scheme like NRGS, like food security and social security schemes being sponsored by government. They started asking government to regularize school and health institutions. That is maybe the problem for the government and basically the mafias and nexus and vested interests. They all came together and branded us as Maoist, and police became the instrumental to arrest our staff and our activists.
Duskar Barak had to go into hiding himself after being warned about the police. Several activists from the Kirti organization were imprisoned and weren't released until over 3 years later. India has an extreme anti-terrorism law that even allows for the use of the death penalty in such cases. For Kandaram and his family, the past few years have been a nightmare. Even his father was accused of conspiring with him. When he refused to stop asking questions about the arrest of his son, he was beaten by the police. His wife Santi had to work in other households to earn some money. The villagers helped her by thatching the roof and donating groceries. The government runs a food distribution system for the poorest of the poor, so that they have access to rice and oil at lower prices. Without it, Santi would not have managed to feed her 3 children. Despite the aid, they could no longer go to school. The family simply couldn't afford the uniforms and books. I didn't know when and if my husband would get out of jail. The children had malaria, and I didn't have enough money to pay for the treatment. Luckily, the villagers were on our side. I educate people about their rights, but the police do not respect my work. This is the biggest obstacle I have ever had in my life. I have to be careful, because the police are still watching me. Those wielding power hardly welcome the Adivasi's fight against mining. Here, they succeeded in having a court bring the excavations to a halt, but only after the local environment had been seriously impacted. With mine operators believing that these hills contain bauxite deposits worth several $billion. The Adivasis accused the government of only supporting the interests of the rich and along the way exploiting the poor, to whom nature and forest are sacred. Over the last century, many of India's Adivasi have been forcibly resettled in order to make way for dams and mines. Now they are joining forces in community groups to put an end to the exploitation of nature, to try and fight back and defend their homelands. High levels of illiteracy amongst the Adivasi have made them a vulnerable target. This means awareness campaigns by human rights organizations have a vitally important role to play. The groups gather regularly to share information and food. Access to education and information about their rights are key to pulling India's original inhabitants out of poverty. Tendai Jiwanga had never heard of property rights before. She estimates that she is about 60 years old, but her exact age she is not sure of. She does know that she has spent half her life fighting to get back her 8 hectares. According to a moneylender, her husband had run up such high debts that he had lost his claim to their fields. After his death, she had to force her oldest son into bonded labour in order to avoid starvation for the whole family. My brother was bonded for 5 years. My mother received 3,000 rupees for him a year. We had to search for edible roots and tubers in the forest. We had to depend on what nature gave us. 3,000 rupees amount to approximately 40 euros. Life was so dire that Katende Yuanga had no choice but to basically sell her son. India's original inhabitants have gained little from India's economic ascent over the past few decades. According to the UN, more than 300 million Indians have to survive on less than $1 per day. Katende assembles baskets and sews dried leaves into plates to earn a little extra income. It is awful to have to send your son away, but how was I supposed to feed 4 children? My husband never talked about money with me. Maybe the moneylender lied, but now I have my land back and am happy. The Adivasi have now become embroiled in a fight against a new seed law benefiting giant multinational Monsanto. It calls for seed to be registered with the authorities so that crops can be more effectively cleared for sale. The laws are designed to help large companies, not small farmers. These signs proclaim, water, forest, land and seed are our rights. Elvira Greiner is the president of Germany's Andere Hilfe. It lends support to Indian organizations that help people regardless of religion or caste. We wouldn't think of doing a project ourselves, because it shouldn't be us as German know-it-alls who should tell people how to do things. The Indians have a great deal of knowledge, and they have wonderful and committed people. They are the ones who can bring forth these changes for their own people in their own country. Our mission is to simply give them a jump start so that they can do that. But we would never presume to tell people what to do. There are also so many delicate subjects. Take, for instance, this problem here of the Adivasi, who are having their land taken away. Our Indian partner organization has faced massive problems. They were accused of being Maoists, since this kind of awareness work is not universally appreciated. It makes it increasingly difficult for the rich and the powerful to simply assert their interests. Duskar Barik asks an ill man to show him the medication he is taking. They are traditional remedies, which alone can't help cure the former mine worker. I can't work anymore and don't receive any assistance. He is not alone. All workers who subsist on daily wages face the same situation. I lost my eye 5 years ago. I received a small compensation, but it is difficult to find a new job with my injury. India is a multi-ethnic country. Its Aboriginal population is estimated to number more than 70 million. It is not an homogeneous group, being made up of some 460 different tribes. The word Adivasi stems from Hindi and essentially means the first inhabitants. The Indian Constitution specifically forbids any discrimination based on caste, language, or religion, at least on paper. In day-to-day life, these lofty principles are often ignored. Along with the untouchables, the Adivasi are among the poorest people in the country. The People's Watch human rights organization assists Adivasi, mainly in dealing with legal questions. That has made its founder unpopular with the authorities. Police raids are frequent.
The options that we have made in terms of making this country a powerful country, a country with an economic growth which has been consistently at 8.5% for the last few years, a country which has ensured that this economic growth comes from largely mineral wealth in this country, has also shown that the largest human rights violations are centered around those areas where this country's economic growth has also been generated, the mines. And therefore this country simultaneously is a country of poverty, a country with extremely poor health conditions, very high levels of malnourishment, still struggling to make sure that we have a literacy rate for girls which goes up and goes higher, a country with a large section of homelessness, large section of people who die due to cold weather in winter, and large sections of people who are killed because they protest on it.
People live on the streets not only in Chennai, but in every Indian city. They tend to be immigrants from poorer areas who hope to find work in the cities. Millions of Adivasi live in the slums, as do Dalits, the untouchable or casteless. The government has vowed to protect both groups following decades of discrimination, and has put in place quota systems for their benefit. But the political will to truly help them is missing. There is a large rift between the constitution and reality. Amul Ramu was born here. She is collecting water provided for only a few hours a day by the city administration to pavement dwellers, the homeless people living on the streets. The pavement dwellers have to worry daily about their shelters being torn down as they hamper traffic. Those with abutting properties also complain about the noise, the trash and the dirty streets. Amal is disappointed by the politicians. Before every election, they make promises, but her life doesn't change no matter whom she votes for. We are not asking the government for jobs, just humane living conditions. This is how we sleep, 6 people, squeezed, one next to the other. Amal's husband drowned 2 years ago. Now, the 30-year-old and her son live with her mother. Her sister also sleeps here, along with her children. We pay rent for the room. My mother wants me to find my own place, but how should I pay for it? I go very early in the morning to the market, buy vegetables and resell them here. That way I earn at least a little bit of money. Leelavati is one of many women who find themselves drawn into prostitution. She had led a normal life, selling flowers and vegetables before her husband's death. She then discovered that she was HIV positive. She has been pregnant 5 times. She terminated 4 of the pregnancies, only giving birth to Kasiawal, now 8 years old. She too is HIV positive. They live together in a room, but when her clients come, Leelavati has to send her daughter to play in the street. I don't know what will become of my daughter. We barely make ends meet. We get our medication for free, but I have to find money for the transportation. Women of the streets often turn to prostitution, finding they have no other choice, especially when they are widows. Poor education means they are often unaware of contraception or disease. Most are illiterate. Campaigns meant to educate the women about AIDS and other sexually transmitted diseases have had limited success. Sex is a taboo subject in Indian society. That has allowed the AIDS virus to spread very rapidly. India now has the highest population of HIV-infected people in the world, with approximately 6 million infected. Despite this, it's estimated only 50% of people know how to correctly use condoms. The non-governmental organisation ARD attends to those infected with HIV. They train so-called peer educators. Their members visit patients, educate them, or simply lend a helping hand, as they soon become outcasts once those around them learn of their disease. Diarrhea, fatigue, and nausea medication are handed out, along with small presents for the children.
HIV-infected people are most discriminated and stigmatized. That the people are not aware of the mode of transferring, how it transfer. But so they are not supporting them, fearing of even touch them if you will contact them. Every day we have to witness 10 or 15 people dying of AIDS. So this support, we are saving so many lives of the people.
Nagaratnam and her 2 children were thrown out by her parents-in-law after her husband died of AIDS. The ARD members have helped her with a loan so that she can buy bamboo to make baskets. She is a member of the women's group and receives essential life-prolonging medication. Twice a month, I receive 10 kilograms of rice from the women's group. They also help me and my children with school uniforms and books. Without their help, my daughter and I would already be dead. They gave me information about the HIV medication. That way we can survive. The ARD group receives essential support from Andheri Hilfe, financed by European sponsors. In India today, there are very many very rich people, but there is also an enormous number of particularly poor people. We don't see our work today as giving these poor people just a handful of rice. We want to instead help them to really take advantage of India's very good democratic system, the outstanding laws, and the great poverty-fighting programs. If we manage that, we will achieve much more than we did in the past with food distributions. Pandya, Lakshmi and Senthil, as well as the 10-year-old Kaleshwari, are all HIV positive. Pandya lost her first husband to AIDS. Like so many others, she was then thrown out of his parents. Senthil was infected after his friends took him to see a prostitute. He married Pandya 3 years ago. Kaleshwari is not his daughter. My parents were pressuring me to get married, but I didn't want to infect a woman with the virus and refused to do it. They don't know that I am positive. I met Pandya through the ARD self-help group. Nobody wanted anything to do with me because of my disease. My mother took me in. I asked myself why I should continue to live, but because of my daughter, I didn't commit suicide. I like going to school. I want to become a doctor so that I can help. These people have gathered to protest against AIDS discrimination and for the rights of children. Education and rehabilitation campaigns for HIV patients are being carried out in 60 of Madurai's slums. Many of those potentially infected refuse tests simply because they are scared of discrimination. Scores of families want nothing to do with HIV patients. Children have even been expelled from schools, so big is the fear of contagion. Here, however, they are able to socialize, taking part in competitions and games. The children recite poems or just tell stories about how they deal with HIV patients, for example, their parents, or how they come to terms with having the disease themselves. The idea is for the stories to help all participants, letting them know they shouldn't feel alone or isolated. All children are encouraged to take part in the activities. This 4-year-old can't be deterred from participating. The event is designed to help people learn about the disease, because hardly anyone is sufficiently educated. This annual ceremony honors the goddess Saraswati. We're in the state of Bihar, where shrines are erected in all of the villages. A puja is celebrated, an invocation and worship. The goddess of wisdom and culture is especially revered amongst pupils and students. They hope she will help them with their education and in their future lives. After a celebration that usually lasts 3 days, The goddess is surrendered to the river amid cheers from the youths. However, many in India can only dream of an education. Here, children stemming from one of the lowest castes gather in the open. The organisation Nirdesh, which receives support from the Austrian Catholic women's movement, tutors the children in the hope that they can be admitted into a public school. Bihar is one of the poorest states in the north of India. Whole families work in fields, plantations, or wherever they can to earn a small wage. They belong to the lowest caste, that of the rat catchers. Many mothers here too sell their children to middlemen who grant them a loan. They often don't know what papers they are signing. Only very few women can read and write. The middleman promised me monthly payments, but I didn't receive anything. He wanted to supply work for 16 boys from the village. When we confronted the middleman, he berated us. We then went to the police. Our children are back, but the court didn't do anything against this man. He just dropped us off at a chicken farm and vanished. We were forced to work hard. Sanu's mother Kausalya searched for her son. She went to the moneylender who had procured the work, but that didn't help. Her son had to work for 1.5 years. And for 1.5 years, neither mother nor child received any income. I had heard of Nirdesh and asked for help there to bring my son back home. The organisation, together with the affected mothers, filed a complaint against the middleman. He had even tried to recruit children in schools. While we are with the Nirdesh leaders in the village, a middleman interrupts filming. He's trying to find out what's happening, but probably hasn't anticipated having to deal with Rambar Singh. The Nirdesh director threatens him with a legal complaint. This man came because he heard that we were here. We educate people about their rights. He doesn't like that. The children are sold at the ages of 10 or 11. The middlemen don't hesitate taking them into other states. They receive a bonus for every worker. Over 80% of people in Bihar eke out a living from farming. Nirdesh has created self-help groups for this population in more than 500 villages. The women are supposed to learn for themselves how to demand rights from the government, and savings programs are designed to prevent any further dependence on middlemen or loan sharks. 3.5 years ago, a non-official school was opened here. It helped the women become aware. We built up a group and saved small amounts. I have received loans twice already because my son and I had to go to hospital. Rita's husband works in the capital Delhi and comes home only once a year. But she is now able to sustain her family on her own. Her daughter Rupa is preparing for final exams. All of the children previously attended the non-official school in order to gain admission to the public school. There is one thing Rita Devi is especially proud of. Never again will she have to apply her thumbprint to a piece of paper. She's learned how to write her name and address. Where these small groups of women have banded together, they find they are able to help each other in meaningful ways. They sing, "Never again will we have to go to the moneylender. We can take life into our own hands. We are strong. We are independent." My husband died at his workplace. I received a compensation, which I deposited at the bank for my daughter's dowry. Many tried to get money from me, but the women prevented me from giving in. I am proud to be one of them. With support from their self-help group, Kaushalya has acquired 3 goats. She sells their offspring and with the revenue is able to provide for her family. In the past, Dalits, the untouchables in India's caste system, weren't even allowed to open bank accounts. Now, the bank managers have finally given in. Even the smallest savings add up, and when a woman can't scrape together her deposit, the others pool their money to help.
Previously, they were very much hesitated to enter to the bank. They are illiterate. They are having small kids with them, and to so many domestic works there. Likewise, they used to a middleman to open his account. No. Now we people, we banker, move to the bank, move to the villages.
The women no longer let themselves be oppressed. In numbers, they have simply become too powerful. The Adivasi and the untouchables are joining forces too. For India, it is a step towards the future.